This web application has been built to present the possibilities of interoperability of different services. Interoperability is the ability of different systems, devices or applications to connect, communicate and exchange information with one another, without restriction, and without effort from the end user. According to the initial business process of redeployment of employees, the performed simulation yielded results for analysis to recognize all activities, stakeholders and resources needed for completing daily operations. The first conclusion that emerged after business process analysis was that business process activities rely on the existence of 5 different entities: employee who have a certain work position in the organizational unit and who use business applications according to the granted application roles. Employees are those who perform the organization's daily activities. They all work in different organizational units across the whole organization. Since all employees carry out different tasks, there are many different work positions. Some of them have a managerial function, while others are operatives. Based on the fact that all of them carry out different tasks, the organization uses many different tools to support those tasks. Those tools are in the form of software, business applications, and those business applications have many different functions. Those functions are application roles applied to every employee in every organizational unit and every existing work position. Every entity type is defined by several attributes and has one or many relations to other entities. Some of those attributes are common for every entity type, like name, ID, but they have unique values, while other attributes are special for a certain entity type, like optimal number of employees, which is only used by the organizational unit entity type, but do not have unique values. The quantity of green rectangles represents a graphical interpretation of the evaluated results. People are generally better with visuals than words. For example, if the evaluation result can be interpreted using a scale with 4 increasing values, then we use graphical notation where the empty rectangle represents the worst evaluation mark, while the next increasing evaluation mark has 1 green rectangle. The next one has 2 green rectangles, and the best evaluation mark is represented with 3 green rectangles. An employee entity consists of many attributes which make an entity unique in the organization or system. Some of them have only one purpose, unique naming, to be a recognized entity in the system. Other attributes are descriptive, and they may also appear in other entities in an equal way. Their functions are to describe the qualities of an employee entity. For example, how good familiar the employee is with information technologies, what languages they speak, how many years of work experience they have, etc. Identification attributes are not used for evaluation purposes, while descriptive attributes are. Original employee data are anonymized in a way that no employee can be undoubtedly recognized or identified. The application user interface presents employee entity identification attributes, ID, name and surname, date of birth, and employee's entity descriptive attributes, disability status, work hours, educational field, educational level, driving license, language knowledge, IT special skills, IT general skills, work position, organizational unit, work experience, location in the form of geo-coordinates, and application roles that we considered important for the redeployment evaluation process. Now we'll take one attribute for description. The attribute employee's language knowledge generally represents a replication of a real organization's situation. The attribute employee's language knowledge is constructed as the highest, max value of any language employee uses. The range of evaluated languages is reduced to several most common languages: English, German, Italian, French, Russian, Hungarian, Czech, Spanish, and Latin. Language selection depends on the most used languages in the organization's daily activities. For ordered values for the employee's language knowledge, attribute values are provided. Insufficient, an employee does not use language in any form, or language knowledge is insufficient for business communication. Good, an employee uses language in a form and scope acceptable, good for business communication. Very good, an employee uses language in a form and scopes appropriate, very good for business communication. Excellent, an employee uses language in a form and scope which are over the expected level, excellent for business communication. The attribute employee's language knowledge is evaluated with the attribute organizational unit's language knowledge by the utility function for the aggregated attribute language knowledge. The attribute employee's language knowledge is compared to the attribute organizational unit's language knowledge in the organizational unit where the employee works. The application user interface has a quick link to the simple explanation of the utilized utility function. A utility function is nothing more than a set of rules managing various attributes combinations. The employee's user interface holds all attributes evaluations presented in an equal way. We'll open a few examples to present how simple and understandable it could be. IT special skills and related utility function. As you can see, we used different colors to visually recognize better options from the good ones. Green-colored values are better than black-colored values. Green and black values may pass, but red-colored values mean that something is not appropriate or not good enough. Let's see one example of a totally inappropriate employee for the current organizational unit. Now we'll take a look at the other types of entities. An organizational unit entity, similar to an employee entity, consists of many attributes which make the entity unique in the organization or system. Some of them have a naming purpose while others are descriptive, and they may also appear in other entities in an equal way. Their functions are to describe the required qualities of an employee entity. How good familiar an employee should be with information technologies, what languages the employee speaks, how many years of work experience they have, etc. Work position, business application and application role are supporting entities referenced by the employee entity and organizational unit entity. They all consist of several attributes which make the entity unique in the organization or system. Business application is used by the organizational unit entity and application role entity. The entity application role is referenced by the employee entity and the organizational unit entity. This was a very quick overview of the 5 entity types we used in our research. Now we'll walk through the decision support model for employee redeployment. Including 5 recognized entity types we described so far, and using the qualitative modeling method, we developed a decision support model. We focused on the qualitative multi-criteria decision analysis, and from the plethora of available methods, we chose the decision expert, DEX method. The DEX method has its origin in a combination of heuristics and traditional aggregation methods, and it incorporates linguistic variables, relations and algorithms in natural language. Since DEX is a qualitative multiple criteria decision analysis method based on qualitative input attributes values, the values in the scale of the attributes are words, symbolic values, rather than numbers. Many people are more familiar with figures than absolute quantities, and the information which people process daily and making decisions is expressed in a non-mathematical, natural language. The decision expert is a qualitative multiple criteria decision analysis method that decomposes the main decision problem into several smaller, less complex subproblems. Subproblems are structured by a hierarchy of attributes forming a DEX tree. The DEX tree consists of 2 types of attributes, basic attributes and aggregated attributes. The basic attributes are first-level input attributes. Attributes are structured in the tree in a way that there is only one path from each aggregated attribute to the root of the tree. The higher-level attribute depends on the descendant attribute in the tree. This dependency is defined by a utility function. The utility function of every aggregated attribute is constructed of its first descendants from the hierarchical tree. We developed the DEX decision support model. Its attributes and value scales for the evaluation of employees and selection of the best candidate for redeployment are constructed in the form of a hierarchical tree. And now we'll go back to the user interface where we'll see three different types of evaluations. The first developed algorithm is utilized in the context when the web application searches for appropriate employees, according to the currently selected organizational unit in the application user interface, for one-directional employee redeployment. The second developed algorithm is utilized in the context when the web application searches for the most appropriate organizational unit, according to the given employee, for redeployment in a one-way direction. And the third developed algorithm is utilized for bidirectional redeployment. In the bidirectional redeployment process, the first employee leaves the workplace and replaces the workplace of the second employee. The first employee is evaluated for redeployment to the organizational unit of the second employee. At the same time, the second employee leaves the current workplace and replaces the first employee's workplace. Hence, the second employee is evaluated for redeployment to the of the first employee. Let's take a look at the first algorithm. The web form denoted appropriate employees for organizational unit is used in the first use case scenario where the web application offers the appropriate employees for one-directional redeployment. It is generated using the algorithm and shows sorted alternatives. All the included attributes are summed up by an algorithm to generate a bigger numerical value as possible for ranking purposes. In the column sort value, the highest number represents the best entity for redeployment. The main reason for utilizing that approach rests in the fact that the organizational unit wants the employee who has the most powerful skills and highest possible qualifications. Each row displays one evaluation result, alternative, one employee from the organizational unit. The web form provides a quick view of all the employees' attributes in tabular form using visual elements for interpreting the important attribute values, the numerical representation of sorting algorithm, transfer button and the help button. For example, R stands for role evaluation, D, disability status evaluation, D, driving license evaluation, E, experience evaluation and so on. Comparing visual indicators in column TR, it is visible that the first 6 rows contain the highest evaluated employees, all being evaluated as suggested for redeployment. Rows from 7 to 10 contain employees that are evaluated as suitable for redeployment, and the last 5 rows, from 11 to 15, contain employees evaluated as not suggested for redeployment. The numerical sort value column represents the calculation of the sorting algorithm and it provides the ability to rank alternatives with barely noticeable differences. Clicking on the help icon activates a pop-up frame holding relevant information. The pop-up frame holds detailed information about the selected evaluation. The pop-up frame has an additional button at the bottom which opens a more detailed template form. Clicking on the transfer button in the user interface immediately redeploys the employee to the selected organizational unit. The second and the third redeployment scenarios are presented in a pretty similar way by the application user interface. The differences are visible in the redeployment function buttons. Now we'll take a few operational examples of employees' redeployment through the application user interface and see how the interoperability works in action. The first component of an interoperability system is the human resource management system. We have it here. The second interoperability component is the decision support system. We have it here, active and in use. The decision support system gives us many alternatives to choose from. And the third interoperability component is the integrated identity and access management system, which tells us what roles have to be applied upon employee redeployment. So let's see. First, we select an appropriate employee for redeployment. Let's take the first one. The employee named DEM869898F currently works in the organizational unit named RI2PZGZ. We'll transfer that employee to the current organizational unit named CO4PGAZ. To be sure, we'll make a check and see the list of current employees in the organizational unit named CO4PGAZ. We can see that the optimal number of employees is 13. Currently, there are 12. But the color is still green because we defined that plus 1 employee is fine. Then we click on the transfer button. What we can see now is that the employee named DEM869898F changed the organizational unit from RI2PZGZ to CO4PGAZ. The application has transferred the employee to the selected organizational unit. We can see the difference in the referenced organizational unit. And finally, let's check, do we have to grant any new application role or maybe remove any role that will not be used anymore? We can see that employee M869898F will have only 2 appropriate application roles after transferring into the CO4PGAZ organizational unit. Let's see more details. This is the third interoperability component, integrated identity and access management. Click on the More button to call a more detailed form holding information about application roles. What roles should be removed and what roles should be granted to fulfill expectations. Of course, in a real life, role provisioning could be automated. And at the end of this presentation, let's see one more function implemented just for testing and fun. This is the employee redeployment calculator, which randomly selects identification numbers and put them into the algorithm. Very quick and full of information. Thank you. Hope that was interesting.